up, Taiwan? I'm Sandy Chi with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Taiwan's president and central bank have stepped in as the new Taiwan dollar continues to strengthen sharply against the US dollar, rising at the fastest pace in decades. That's as Taiwan continues trade negotiations with the US. Chris Gorin was at Taiwan's central bank for their announcements and brings us this report.
From the presidential office to here at the central bank, Taiwan's government officials are reassuring the public that the country's currency, the new Taiwan dollar, will remain stable following recent rapid changes in the exchange rate. Importantly, they also sought to clarify that they are not under pressure from the U.S. to let the Taiwan dollar appreciate.
我们政府去跟美国谈这个经贸谈判的时候，经贸的那个磋商的时候呢，事实上呢，中央银行是没有参加的，没有参加，表示说没有汇率的这个议题，没有汇率的这个议题，美国的财政部呢也没有要求说新台币要升值。
Now, this all started because the value of Taiwan's currency rose against the US dollar by more than 6% since Friday, the largest rise in decades. That can be pretty hard on an economy like Taiwan's that is highly dependent on exports. The central bank is being watched very closely right now because, of course, local exporters want the currency's value to stay low. But the Taiwan government is in the middle of trade negotiations with the US. And one of Donald Trump's long-standing criticisms of US trading partners is that they manipulate their currency to keep their exports cheap, which Trump says is unfair. And in fact, Taiwan has been on the so-called monitoring list of the US Treasury for years. Those are countries at risk of being officially labeled a currency manipulator. And the Treasury is expected to release its latest report on such practices very soon. Taiwanese officials definitely do not want to be labeled a currency manipulator in the middle of their negotiations with the U.S., and the central bank governor denied that they manipulate the currency at today's conference. That's why the central bank is being watched so closely and will continue to be watched closely until a deal is made. Now, I've been speaking to economists today about how the exchange rate might affect Taiwan's economy, and I began by asking them which industries will be the hardest hit.
With the sharp appreciation in such a short time, of course, it creates a huge pressure for company exporting to the U.S. And especially, I think the pressure will be huge, especially for companies with narrow profit margin. For the high-tech company, I think the shock will be limited. But for the traditional industry, I think the shock will be quite dramatic.
So it seems it's the smaller industries in Taiwan, not its larger electronics exporters, that may be hurt the most from this. Luffy Li, Hank Shu, and Chris Gorin in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Legislator recall campaigns have been sweeping Taiwan, with both opposition and ruling party lawmakers in the crosshairs. May marks a pivotal time in the recall movement as key deadlines approach. Leslie Liao has more.
Control of the legislature. That's what Taiwan's ruling Democratic Progressive Party and main opposition Kuomintang are struggling over. The KMT, in coalition with the smaller Taiwan People's Party, has a slight majority over the DPP. And that's causing problems for the ruling party, which is hitting roadblocks in implementing its policies. Most notably, the legislature slashed the government's proposed 2025 general budget by a record of near 7%. Civic groups have initiated recalls against KMT legislators, while the opposition has launched recalls of their own against DPP lawmakers. All in all, 50 lawmakers around the country face takedown campaigns. Before recalls can be taken to a public vote, campaigners must complete a two-stage petition process. In the first stage, they must collect signatures from 1% of a lawmaker's constituency. In the second stage, that bar is raised to 10%. The recall movement has been going on for months now, and second-stage petition deadlines have arrived. The first deadline was last Friday, beginning with a move to recall KMT lawmaker Huang Jianbing from Taidong County. Organizers say they've submitted more than enough petitions to initiate a vote.
希望在这里可以再带领全国其他地区的罢免呢，能够马上大家加油。
And election officials in Taidong say they're going to do their due diligence.
将依法验收，并将审查结论结果呈报 中央选举委员会。
This all comes at a time when the KMT is questioning the system. Prosecutors have searched several KMT offices in recent weeks and detained party officials after reports surfaced that the names of dead people have shown up on recall petitions they are involved in. The KMT says the moves represent efforts by President Lai Ching-te to stifle the opposition.
赖总统的态度已经很清楚啊，他希望每一个选区只要罢蓝的都要过关。所谓的鹰犬们就全力的照他的态度来对在野党不断的追杀。
But that hasn't stopped the recall movement. Over in Hualien County, a KMT stronghold, a recall campaign against KMT legislator and caucus whip Fu Kunxi is picking up steam. Organizers say they've received over 32,000 signatures in the second stage, well over the 20,000 threshold required to put his seat to a vote.
这不只是一次的罢免行动，这是一次对长期政治垄断结构的反抗，也是花莲公民对不负责任的傅昆萁表达拒绝的行动。
Responding on social media, Fu says he respects the will of the people, but believes voters will choose to keep him in office. Monday is also the second stage petition deadline for KMT Deputy Speaker Johnny Jiang. Campaigners against him said they collected enough signatures and have submitted them. While this opening salvo seems worrisome for the KMT, deadlines for recalls against DPP lawmakers won't come until the end of May. Election officials also must validate every signature before an official recall vote can be called. Though the campaigns have been going on for months now, it's still relatively early to tell how the recalls will play out and who will be in control of the legislature a year from now. Patrick Tun and Leslie Liao for TaiwanPlus.
Civil groups around the world are campaigning for Taiwan to have a voice in global health discussions. It comes just weeks before the annual meeting of the WHO's organizing body, which Taiwan has not been invited to, Rees reports.
Health has no borders. That's the message from Taiwan as it ups its campaign for entry into international health organizations. From op-eds in newspapers in the UK and Sweden to civil group gatherings in the Philippines and Australia, ahead of this year's World Health Assembly later this month, Taiwan wants the world to know that its exclusion is harmful to global health. Taiwan has historically been excluded from the WHA, the decision-making body of the World Health Organization, due to pressure from China, which claims Taiwan as its own. Taiwan was granted observer status under the name Chinese Taipei from 2009 to 2016, when the more China-friendly Kuomintang held the presidency, but hasn't been invited since. Despite not receiving an invitation to join again this year, Taiwan has announced plans to send an action team anyway. Though they won't be able to attend any official meetings, they will continue to garner support from the sidelines.
除了传统的这些诉求以外，也用比较活泼的方式，去这个呈现台湾的民意，特别台湾人的心声。所以我们希望透过这一次的WHA 的大会，有更多的人能够来为台湾发声，也能够争取在大会中让我们的主张能够呈现出来。
With its 30-year-old national health system often ranked among the best in the world, and as a leader in AI technology, Taiwan says it has a lot to contribute to the future of global healthcare. Health Minister Cho Tae-yuen is urging the United Nations to stick to its vision of leaving no one behind, arguing that health is a fundamental human right and should not be politicized. But as with anything related to Taiwan's place in the international community, the subject is inevitably political. And with civic groups planning to mobilize people from over 50 countries to help Taiwan's case, including an event outside the UN office in Geneva the day before the assembly begins, Taiwan's push for better health for all is also a chance to campaign for its position on the global stage. Devon Tai and Rees for TaiwanPlus.
The military says Taiwan received a first batch of 16 ATACMS missiles from the US in January. Military sources have independently confirmed the delivery of the missiles. Local media reports say another 48 of the missiles were scheduled to be delivered in the first quarter of this year. ATACMS is a supersonic battlefield missile with a range of up to 300 kilometers. The missiles are part of a deal agreed in 2020, which also included HIMARS rocket launchers. Rising tensions between China and Taiwan are forcing neighboring Philippines to consider how it might respond to a conflict. As Rick Loward reports, massive joint U.S.-Philippine military drills on the coast facing Taiwan reassure some but trouble others.
51-year-old Philippine fisher Edison Palato has spent the last 2 days shorebound, drying last week's catch of anchovies. He's unable to head back out to sea because just off this coast, the Philippine military is conducting live fire drills with US forces. Despite missing out on much-needed income, Palatao supports the joint exercises.
Napakatahimik po itong apari. Kung ganun po ang mangyari, lalong-lalo na wala kaming kalaban-laban dyan. Ang gusto lang namin, nakasuporta po ang military dito sa Cagayan.
Along this remote coastline in the northern Philippines, hundreds of US and Philippine troops are training side by side, using planes, tanks, artillery and infantry to practice holding off a potential invasion. It's all part of joint drills called Balikatan, or shoulder to shoulder, held in spots across the country every year.
Enemy that we are fighting against here is an amphibious force coming from surface ships, deploying an amphibious force whose intent is to establish a foothold on the beaches with an intent to move inland once that mission has been accomplished. So a counter landing is intended to stop them.
And this location was chosen on purpose. Taiwan is just a few hundred kilometers north of here, across the Luzon Strait. Beyond these waters, China has been conducting more and more military sorties encircling Taiwan, putting pressure on the self-ruled island nation that Beijing says is part of its sovereign territory. The Chinese drills have got the Philippines planning what it would do if war broke out.
In any conflict scenario, it is essential that we establish sea control over Basi Channel and Luzon Strait. And one way of enhancing sea control is to have positive presence in Cagayan province.
To bolster its defences, the Philippines is giving defence partner, the US, more access to strategic areas like this. But not everyone here in rural Cagayan, where many families have Chinese heritage or business ties, welcomes American boots on the ground.
We should not go along with the U.S. what they want. We should decide on our own, not based on the U.S. policy or not on base their advice to us.
And suspicion here is growing over a new infrastructure development project. There are fears it could make the town a target.
They just told us that it's a port expansion, a tourism project for the betterment of Apari. I don't know if it collides with what is happening right now with the military exercises.
For many on this far-flung coast, life is not easy. They rely on fishing and farming to get by, livelihoods made harder by rising temperatures and more frequent typhoons. Now, as gunfire rings out near their homes, they know they must also face another growing threat. The fight for regional dominance moving closer to their doorstep. Fu Hua Hong, David Santos and Rick Loward in Cagayan, the Philippines for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, take a look at this exhibition at Australia's National Portrait Gallery, where autistic artists are showcasing their paintings. I'm Sanichi, take care and see you next time.